I'm Harry Truitt of Lighthouse Diving Center, and today I'm interviewing Bruce Higgins from Edmonds, Washington. And Bruce has been one of our pioneers in creating the Edmonds Underwater Park. Bruce, I have some questions for you.
Sounds good.
What inspired you to start diving?
Well, to start diving, I was a tender. I was working at the University of Michigan at the time, and these guys were working on this project, and they were using all this neat technology, the Scuba units. They had communications, and they were dealing with sampling devices, and I said, well, that's much more fun than being a tender. So I signed up for the university's scuba class, and primarily because I was interested in oceanography, and I could tell that'd be a good way for my foot to get in the door, to be able to do more projects and get more engaged with what was going on in the local oceanographic community.
So when was that? What year was that? Tell me about that.
That was in 1969, was the summer I was the tender, and then I took the class winter quarter, so that I didn't have to do my open water dives in the snow, being Michigan. And so I was able to finish the program in May of 1970.
Wow. And who was your instructor? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, my instructor was Lee Summers, now A13. And he was in charge of both the scuba program at the University of Michigan, but he was also getting started with the Association, let's see, AAUS, Association of Underwater Scientists, and so he was just getting that rolling, and he was their first president. So
I remember Lee Summers. You worked with a pretty famous guy.
Yeah, he was a very inspiring instructor.
So what was your first dive like?
My first dive, so I was diving in this little lake as part of the university's certification program. And back then we didn't do lots of dives, we just did 2. And the first dive we went down this line that was attached to the flag. We got down to 20 feet, and then we cleared our mask and we cleared our regulator and we signed our name on the slate. And then, horrors of horrors, my instructor says, follow your compass back to the beach. And I went, oh yeah, right. In 8-foot visibility, I'm supposed to find my way back to the beach. So I'm following my compass, and I know I'm off course, but I'm following my compass, and I think I know I'm going in the right direction. And I stand up right in the mud, right in front of where we were getting in the water, and I said, how can that be? I wasn't following the direction I was planning. But anyways, so I learned a lot about navigation real quick.
Yeah, a lot of us early guys didn't even know how to use a compass.
Right. Yep. So that was a lot of fun.
Well, did you have any other early mentors other than Lee Summers?
At the university, the program that I worked with was the Great Lakes Research Division. Mm-hmm. And Bob Anderson was in charge of their diving cadre, and he had been a Navy diver and had been with the experimental diving unit. So he was really into all the technology as well. And so that was pretty interesting. He was a really good mentor. And then I decided that it'd be a good idea to become an instructor. So I racked up enough dives and got to learn about more NWDHA instructors by going to an instructor training class in Chicago. But I wasn't really skilled enough, so a couple of those guys became my mentors as I decided to finish my training so that I could actually eventually become an instructor. So
you took instructor training in Chicago?
In Chicago in 73.
In 73?
Yep.
Okay, that was good.
Dennis Graver was on the staff.
Dennis Graver, another great pioneer.
Right.
That's good. And what were your classes like? What was early instruction like back then?
Well, in the early days, I was helping Lee out with his classes through the university, and then Bob Anderson, he ran a program at the YMCA, And since the university classes were often hard for me to attend because of other classes that I had, I was probably 50% trying to do the day ones, but more often I was trying to do the evening ones through the Y. And the classes were typically about 8 weeks or so. We had at least 8 or 9 pool sessions, and a couple times I remember that they had problems with the pool, so we did the entire pool session in the classroom. We pretended to take off the tanks and all that because the pool was closed. They had a plumbing problem or something. It was dry, and so we went through all the motions. And then when we got it to do it in the water, oh, everything's so much lighter.
Do you remember the equipment that you were using then?
Yeah, it was pretty basic. I used a Decor 100. That was the best stuff. And to take my original class, they only had 10 sets of equipment, and I really wanted to take the Scuba class. So Lee said, well, you can take the class, but you're going to have to arrange your own equipment. And I went, oh, I wonder how that's going to work. So I borrowed my regulator from my brother, and a cylinder from the research group that I worked with, and a weight belt from another guy that worked on our dive group. So I was able to cobble together all the equipment. And so every class I had to trundle it all over to the pool because I didn't have a place to store it there, and then trundle it all back. So I learned a lot about hauling the equipment around early on. And I was kind of a rare bird in my first class because my brother had advanced and bought a submersible pressure gauge, and I was the only student in the class with a submersible pressure gauge. So that was pretty fun. But some of the lessons I couldn't use my brother's regulator because it was still required that I use a 2-hose regulator for all the skills. So to pass all the tests for the midterm and all the final, I had to still use a 2-hose regulator. So I was able to sign one of those out from the diving locker to use to pass my tests.
I see. So how many years were you out in Michigan and diving out in the Midwest?
That was for 3 years.
3 years?
And then very shortly after the situation in Chicago, I got accepted to grad school at Oregon State. So of course, that was a hotbed of NWDHA activity and classes and instruction down there with Mitch Kramer. So got involved in their diving program, and I was in ocean engineering, and the ocean engineering group had a separate diving program from the oceanography department because we were more focused on strength of materials, testing the sediment, and those kinds of things. So those were the kinds of projects that I worked on there.
So that's what brought you to the Northwest.
It brought me to the Northwest.
So
yeah. There was no returning once I got my feet in the salt water.
Of course, yeah, I know. And then you started diving in the Northwest, and what kind of dives were you doing down in the Oregon area?
Well, I didn't have a vehicle, so one of the ways that I snagged to get involved in diving is I joined the dive club, the Oregon State Sea Beavers, and so part of arranging dives for the club was arranging a ride for me. So we went to the Oregon coast, Newport, up to Tillamook, and sometimes as far south as Florence, and we were diving in the ocean. But we also had to have a backup plan where we'd be diving in the estuary like Uquinna Bay because it was too nasty. And then we had to have a backup plan for the bays because sometimes those were too messy. So we dived into the rivers. And so I got a chance to link up with people and dive around the central Oregon coast.